Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at the Kraljic Matrix. Now, the Kraljic Matrix helps you develop a purchasing strategy for the products and services that your organization procures. It aims to maximize your profit whilst minimizing supply-side risks. Essentially, it allows you to work more strategically with your suppliers. And the model works by mapping the profit impact of a product on one axis and your reliance on the supplier of that product on the other. Doing this will result in a matrix of 4 quadrants, as you can see here. So let's take a look at each axis. Firstly, profit impact. Products you purchase with a high profit impact are important to you because they determine your profit margins or the sale price of your finished product. And these products directly impact your bottom line. Next, supply risk. The supply risk will be low when goods are commonplace and it's easy to switch between suppliers. The supply risk will be high when you need to purchase scarce goods with limited suppliers. Now, it's worth noting that supply risk will also be high when new technology could potentially disrupt the market, leaving you holding outdated products in stock that you can no longer use or sell. Now that you understand the dimensions of the model, let's jump in and take a look at each of the 4 quadrants. So firstly, non-critical items. Now, these items have a low financial impact on your organization, are in abundant supply, and are standardized in nature. Now, the classic example of a non-critical item is office supplies. Although necessary for employees to do their job, stationery does not drive profitability. If your supplier goes out of business, it doesn't pose a severe threat to your business, as you can simply switch suppliers. Now, although these products are low impact and have ample supply, they are nevertheless interesting because the cost of handling them can often outweigh the cost of the product itself. Because of this, the purchasing strategies you would typically use for these types of items focus on reducing administrative cost and logistical complexity. So one way to do this is to delegate authority for ordering them to the individual departments that require it. That will reduce the administrative burden on the purchasing department without adding significant overhead to the respective departments. So the next quadrant is leverage items. These items have a considerable financial impact on your organization. However, they are standardized goods in abundant supply with little supply risk. Now, the purchasing strategy you should use for these items is to negotiate hard and negotiate frequently, switching suppliers as necessary to achieve the best price. Aim to make the most of any bargaining power that you have. The next quadrant is bottleneck items. These items have a low financial impact on your organization, but they can only be acquired from one supplier or very few suppliers, or their delivery is unreliable. An example of a bottleneck item is an electronic component you need that is only made by one manufacturer. Now, the purchasing strategy you would typically use for bottleneck items is twofold. So firstly, you need to ensure continuity of supply, and that can be achieved by establishing a long-term contract or long-term contracts with your supplier and by maintaining minimum stock levels. Secondly, you need to develop plans to reduce your dependence on this supplier by adapting your products and investigating alternative substitute products and suppliers. The final quadrant is strategic items. Now, these items have a significant financial impact on your organization, and that could either mean your organization spends a great deal of money on these items, or that they are directly linked to your organization's differentiation in the marketplace and your organization's profit. These items are also scarce, meaning they can only be obtained from one or very few suppliers. Now, an example of a strategic item is a scarce metal that you are highly dependent on, but has only a single supplier and is produced in a politically unstable country. The purchasing strategies you would typically use for these type of items include collaboration and strategic partnerships. So for example, you could invest in your supplier's business, so you are essentially co-creating the strategic item with them. So let's take a look of what a simplified example of the Kraljic Matrix for Tesla might look like. So firstly, Tesla buys a lot of nuts, bolts and tires. Now these are standardized items for which there are many suppliers, and so we categorize these as non-critical items. Now Tesla should aim to reduce the administrative burden of sourcing and handling these items. Secondly, Tesla also purchases satellite navigation screens. Now, there are many manufacturers who can supply these screens, but they are essential to Tesla because they are one of the key ways Tesla differentiates itself from other EV manufacturers. So we're going to categorize these items as leverage items. Now, in terms of an approach for these items, Tesla should ask suppliers to tender for their business to try and get the best price. Thirdly, suppose just one company globally produces the fabric that Tesla uses to cover its seats. Now, this fabric doesn't drive profitability, but it's a bottleneck item because there's just one supplier. Now, in this case, Tesla should use a contract with this supplier to ensure supply continuity. And in addition to this, it should look to maintain relatively high stock levels. Fourthly, we have strategic items. Now, certain rare earth metals such as cobalt, lithium and nickel are critical to EV production, but they're in very short supply globally. So we're going to categorize these items as strategic items. Now, in terms of an approach for handling these items, then Tesla should, and in fact Tesla has, partnered with miners to ensure continuity of supply. In effect, they're co-creating these rare earth metals. Now, there are several advantages and disadvantages associated with the Kraljic Matrix. In terms of advantages, then it forces organizations to think strategically about each of their suppliers instead of just focusing on doing deals with suppliers. It focuses your efforts on areas where profits are most significant, which is important. Now, in terms of disadvantages, then both axes of the matrix are somewhat vague in definition. So, for example, it's not entirely clear what factors exactly constitute supply risk. And it's also unclear how to differentiate between low and high on both axes. You know, at what precise value does that happen? You're left to define that for yourself. So in summary, the Kraljic Matrix works by mapping the profit impact of a product on one axis and your supply risk on the other. It essentially provides a portfolio management approach to managing your many suppliers. It enables you to see which relationships are important to you so you can focus on handling those relationships with care. Now, the Kraljic Matrix helps you in the first step of supplier management, identifying the most important suppliers. From there, you can generate ideas as to how to handle those suppliers strategically. So that's it for this lesson. Really hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.